Josh, for you, you got the tail end of your career was in the wristband era when you had all that information, etc. How much did that change things? Or did it?
I mean, it definitely changed it to some extent of like you would build scouting reports based off of like who was catching as well. Like, I mean, not only just of kind of what like Martin Maldonado, I remember like one of his things, like from when he was catching, if you swung and fouled a pitch off, like he would come back to that pitch immediately. Like he wasn't ever like thinking like, because most people are scrapping that saying like, oh, he took a good swing at it. No, he comes right back to it every time versus like some guys might go, if it was a fastball, some guys go to the slider next. If it was a fastball, he was coming right back to it. That was one of his like things that he liked to do. So you could kind of game plan a catcher just as much as you could a pitcher, right? Especially in certain situations. Maybe they didn't like to block, or maybe they didn't, didn't have good hands, strong hands at the bottom of the zone. I mean, I used to love watching AJ Pierzynski was catching because he had the heaviest hands ever. Anything that was at the bottom of the zone, he just ripped right out of the zone. So when he was catching, I never had to worry about the bottom of the strike zone. So it's like that kind of is out a little bit. I think the biggest difference right now for like obviously the pitch shapes, and there's a lot of different things as far as like what they're featuring, but you just don't see guys in the game long enough anymore. I think, and then the turnover, there's just such a rapid turnover of guys from every team's bullpen now more than ever. Whether it's due to injury, whether it's due to just roster flexibility. So I remember towards the tail end of my career, like every guy that I felt like I was facing, I'm like, I've never heard of this guy. I've never seen this guy. I don't even know who this guy is. What does he throw? Like, what's his go-to pitch versus like the first 10 years or so of my career. It was like I kind of knew like, oh, CJ Wilson's on the mound today. Like I've had at bats off him. I know what he's gonna do. I knew what he was gonna feature and that kind of things. Like I knew where he would go to if there was runners in scoring position. Like you just kind of have this innate ability, right? And then towards the end, the turnover just got so much. You just didn't really. You don't know. You don't know what's their makeup as a pitcher.
The biggest thing I noticed just from afar is just how much more guys were watching video in 2021, 2022 than they were, say, in 2009, 2010 during the afternoon in the lead up to a 7 o'clock pitch. And you're just trying to look for anything that you can find in addition to your scouting reports. But I guess nothing matches. You can watch all the film you want, but there's nothing like just seeing it up close, just seeing how that pitch breaks, what's going to happen in a certain situation. Mm-hmm. What's the biggest difference, guys, that you see with your eyes when facing a guy rather than what you see from your eyes when watching it on video?
Yeah, everybody's perspective is different of that, right? I remember watching, like this is why I was playing. I remember watching Garrett Richards, and it was like Sunday Night Baseball. They were playing against the Yankees, and he's throwing like 97, 98, and it's cutting, it's sinking. He's got like a hammer curveball at like 87, and then like a little slider or whatever. And I remember watching it on TV. I'm like, this guy's nasty. Like, how does he get hit? And then I got into the box against him, and I was like, this definitely doesn't look like what it is on the TV. I felt like I was pretty successful against Garrett. Not to say that he wasn't, he was a good pitcher, but I just remember watching him on TV and being like, there's no way I'm hitting that. And then I got into the box and I'm like, yeah, I feel like I got a chance. So there definitely is that type of perception. And then, you have all the analytics of guys like perceived velocity. I'm not a big believer in that. Especially guys that were like that have like big extension, like that's a big term that they like to use it. And that's been around for a long time. They just have a measurement for it now.
Like what does that mean? I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of a guy that if you watch video, he's not gonna awe you. Like Marco Estrada,
Oh,
super straight fastball, great changeup, and he had a pretty good curveball. Pretty
mhm.
much a 3-pitch guy. If you look at him on video, you're like, nothing is gonna, nothing's
Stand
gonna
out.
surprise you. It's just
Yeah.
it's right there. But then you get in the box, and then you get to feel the changeup for the first time, and you're like, okay, this thing's never getting there. And
Mhm.
then that fastball ends up playing up, and then he's got the curveball that plays off the fastball plane because he'd throw it up in the zone. So and it's hard as a hitter to be able to say, like, as a hitter, first of all, unless you get in a 2-strike count, you can't go up there and hit fastball or hit the whole pitcher's arsenal. And Josh was talking about hunting pitches. The good hitters will have a plan and they'll hunt a pitch until they get in a situation where they might have to protect a little bit. They might have to cut down on some power, to not strike out so easily. The big league pitchers are too good to go up there and be like, oh, I'm going to hit fastball, curveball, slider, changeup, and I'm just going to see it and hit
Yeah.
it. Like,
Yeah, you can't do it all.
there are times where like you feel like Superman in the box and you can hit anything, but especially nowadays, these guys, their stuff is too good. Like you have to
Yeah, the
have to
stuff's
have
too
a
good.
plan. You have to have a plan. You have to be hunting something. And what happens, the pitcher's job is he's trying to get you in between pitches, so
Mhm.
you have a tough decision to make. And
Right.
that's where the game is, and that's why, being ahead in a count as a pitcher is so important. And that's why when you're in good hitters counts and you can stay selective, that's when guys do damage the most. And that, to me, that's the game of baseball is, who can get strike one as quickly as possible, who can get ahead in counts. And as a hitter, who can keep the pitcher from, like, first of all, you got to keep them in the zone. If you give them free strikes, you're kind of cooked.
Mhm.
So, the plan is really important. Hunting good pitches is important. And as a pitcher, it's the other way around. You want to attack. And then if you can get the guy to chase, that's even better. To me, that's the game of baseball.
So let's dig into that plan that you talked about, Russ, because it's an interesting one. You're going to face a starting pitcher 3 times in a game. So your plan, JD, going up
Mhm.
against a pitcher for the first AB, how much does that evolve into the second or the third time you see him?
It definitely evolves. I mean, you get more comfortable. I mean, let's say he's a starter or whatever like that, and you've had a couple starts against him now. Like that's even more so. Like until like 2 or 3, like now you start getting a really good feel. The first, I would say, the majority of the time, my first at bat, I was going up there and I'm taking the fastball away. Um, and I'm gonna make especially because I hit up to the front of the lineup early on. I was going to make him establish throwing something that was spinning early, whether if it was a curveball, slider, changeup, split, whatever it was. He was going to have to throw that in the strike zone and show me he could do that through the course of our lineup before I was like, okay, now I'm on that pitch.
Mm.
Or I'm going to look for that pitch. Because if he can't throw it for a strike, and even so, like let's say he's getting strikes with it, are they in the zone or are guys swinging out of the zone strikes for it? If guys are swinging out of the zone on it, I'm definitely not looking for it because now it's looking like a good pitch and they're swinging out. I don't want to do anything with that in the first place. But once, and this is where like young hitters, especially, this is what I had to learn because when I was younger, I had a little bit of power and I would get spun to death a lot, right? So people talk about sitting on off speed, right? I had to learn how to do that. And as a hitter, like you're trying to figure out like where does this slider have to start or curveball, whatever it may be, where does it have to start at out of the hand for my eyes to say yes? Because like what ends up happening as a younger guy, like you start swinging and missing at the breaking ball, and the coach is telling you like, "Hey man, like you gotta stop swinging at the breaking ball here." Well, internally now you become even more paranoid about swinging and missing at the breaking ball. That now anything that has spin, you start swinging and expanding even more. It'd be like my freshman year when I was in the SEC. Like the Friday night guy, I would hammer. I'd hit like a homer or a double off of him, and maybe have a couple hits that night. And then Saturday, Sunday, like by Sunday, I was bunting to try to get a hit because they started throwing me all sliders and I couldn't hit it, and I was just swinging. So when I got older, I had to learn like where does that pitch need to start at in this window, for me, or like at me, like does it need to start at my head? Does this need to start at my ribs? Like where does it have to start at? And when people ask me like who's one of the toughest pitchers of all time that I faced, I immediately say like Dylan Betances was like a nightmare because
Really?
yeah, he was a nightmare because he threw 100. You had no idea where the heater was going. He missed up and into righties with it. And the breaking ball, the only one you could hit would have to start, behind my ear hole. And so, like, you have to stay in. Like, you have to stay in on that. So, like, when he was a closer, I remember, like, I get into the box and sitting there. I'm like, before I could step in, I'm like, are you ready to die right now? And I'd be like, okay, like I'm ready to die. Like I can get into games on the line, boom, boom, boom. But then like towards the end of his career where he scuffled and the Girardi started putting him in the 7th inning and they were losing.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, dude, you can have this one. Like I wasn't a guy that gave away too many at bats, but I'm like, look, dude, like my plan right now is to take till I get 3 or I go to first base.
This one is not worth dying. This at bat ain't worth dying for.
Right. Who is the pitcher who drove you nuts, Russ?
I mean, I had a few, but the one that comes to mind first is Tim Lincecum.
Yeah.
In his heyday.
Yeah.
I mean, he could get me out with any of his pitches. He had electric fastball, and he's one of the guys who he'd throw me righty on righty changeups, and I just hit a weak ground ball rollover. It was just one of those things. I just never felt like, I never felt like I was
girl action.
Yeah, I never felt like I was hunting him. I felt like I was being hunted.
They called him the freak.
I mean, no, when he first came up, he was electric, and then he had a couple Cy Young seasons. And we faced him a lot because he was in our division when I was in LA. He gave me a hard time. I don't even know if I ever got a hit off of him. It's just, he's good. I mean, I'd battle him. I'd get to 3-2, and then he'd find a way. He'd find a way to get me out. I mean, I may have had a couple walks and maybe like a nubber or a blooper somewhere.
That's a win.
That's a win. That felt like a double in the gap.